Right. Well, good morning again. Welcome again, everyone. I'm going to continue with our sermon series where we take a look at 1 Corinthians and a topic called What is Love? So, of course, you have to throw out the question to beginning. What is love? It's such a key word for us as Christians. People say, what is God? They'll say, God is love. Jesus says, love one another. I mean, it's all over our religion. It's all over our scriptures. The Apostle Paul says, right, in 1 Corinthians, if I have spiritual gifts but not love, I'm a clanging gong or a noisy cymbal. So this is crucial. But the thing is, we should probably know what we're talking about when we say what is love, because if it is so important, can we get a handle on what it is? As you know, the passage in 1 Corinthians is a favorite of weddings. It's a lot more of a favorite these days than the whole submitting and obeying your husband bit. At least in ELCA circles, that doesn't get chosen ever. But we stand up there and we read, love is patient, love is kind, love is not arrogant or boastful or rude. So then what is Paul talking about? What is it that's not arrogant or boastful or rude? Is it a feeling? Is it how great it feels to be in love, to give love, to be in a state of love? Well, that's not really the context here, of course. As I've said, the context is the church in Corinth. It's a new church. Paul planted it. It's got lots of different social classes coming together, which is kind of an experiment in that day that never happened in ancient Greece and Rome. And in general, if classes used to mingle, they always did it in a way where somebody was trying to get sort of someone was trying to get an edge or an advantage. It never was just fellowship between people of different classes. The system was called patronage. It's a lot like kind of what we think of it as political patronage, right? You know, you help me with something, and then I might help you with an appointment. Right? You give a big donation and I'll find a country you've never visited and make you the ambassador to. Right? Patronage. You know, you pat my back, I pat yours. And the Roman world was absolutely chock full of this. This was how everything worked. It's maybe a little bit like, you know, sort of the corporate ladder as well, right? You know, management comes together. You know, do people really just hang out with the CEO for the fun of it? Or are they really thinking, you know, if I hang out with the CEO, maybe promotions will flow my way or an advancement will flow my way, right? And the CEO's no idiot. They didn't get there because they were dumb. They know how it works. They know everyone's kissing butt to try to get something. If you were in high school, right, it would be the popular girls' table, right? And there's a queen bee, and she's got a couple henchmen on each side. You know, and all the girls want to be at that table, so she has to restrict it. She's got her little body, her minions that keep the unpopular people away. And they'll all talk about how good of friends they are, and they'll post online, hashtag friends forever, you know. But the reality is, none of them are actually friends. Everyone's just jockeying for position. And you are infinitely disposable. As they learn very quickly in the system. Once one offends the queen bee, one can go from BFF to persona non grata very quickly, although I guarantee you none of them are doing hashtag persona non grata. That's how patronage works. And the reason I get into all this is because, as I said, the church in Corinth was a bit of a social experiment. It had never happened in that world, where you had both landowners and traders hanging out at dinner with prostitutes and slaves and hanging out and without there being some sort of advantage to be gained. And yet, even as new Christians, while they said they believed that everybody was equal and we are all one big family, and that's what Paul told us now that we're all Christians, the reality was old habits die hard. And so in comes the spiritual gifts, right? And some are experiencing these great gifts. They got tongues, they got prophesying, they're doing healings. And those who got healings immediately started thinking, well, maybe I'm a little bit better than the others. And maybe the others should start kissing my butt a little bit, huh? And so Paul hears about this. He's pulling his hair out. And he's like, this was not what I wanted to set up, was yet another hierarchy system. More patronage, more jockeying for position. That isn't what the kingdom of God is supposed to be about. Because, of course, we all know that a system with patronage and rank, there is no love in that system. It's transactional. People are used. Everyone is a tool. Everyone's a stepping stone to something else. There is no love there. But what kind of love is Paul talking about? Well, it matters. So when he comes in, he says, no, all that stuff doesn't matter unless you have love. What kind of love is he talking about? Well, you're going to get a little Greek lesson today. I promise I won't go into too depth of it. But it matters because there's different words in Greek for love. We just kind of have one. They got two. And it's kind of cool. Eros and agape. Eros is where we get the word erotic. Aphrodite was the goddess of Eros, not the goddess of agape. Eros is lust and sensuality and passion and emotions, and probably what most of us think of when love. When someone's singing a song about love, this is probably what they're talking about. It's those new tingles you get when you meet a new person and it's all exciting because it's new. This is Eros talking. And it's probably what we think of, it's like a feeling. Eros is a feeling. Then on the other hand, you have this cool Greek word called agape. You've heard us use it. We had past couple years for Maundy Thursday, we had the agape meal, And it's a fun word, but I don't know how many people know it unless you give an explanation. But agape is about community, service to others, social relations, building each other up in a organizational or group setting. It's much more about the behavior that you choose to do. This is maybe a little bit like unspoken rules for how to get along in community. They're not really rules because they're supposed to come from the inside. It should come from your heart. But it does kind of start to look like social conventions. They're acts of love for living together. So agape really has nothing to do with feelings. You can act in a way that is agape and not be feeling it at all. And so you get two guesses, of course, on which word Paul uses in 1 Corinthians 13. And the answer is yes, it's agape. It's not passion or lust or tingles or butterflies, which is why the passage, I think, does kind of work for weddings. If you're doing a wedding for classical Greek scholars who understand the nuances of this, which is a wedding I've never done. But if we're standing up there and we're saying that agape is patient and kind and not arrogant or boastful or rude, that's true. That's true. If we're saying that agape is the choices that we choose to do for one another when we live in family and community, yeah, that's true. I can get behind that. If it's choices that come from ourselves for better relations with one another, yeah, I can agree to that. I mean, you look at what it says, 1 Corinthians 13, our topic of the day. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. And of course, we're all going to say, duh. Nobody loves the boastful or the arrogant or the rude. At least that's what I grew up thinking. I used to think that, kindness would be the most attractive thing. Then I got into junior high school. And I found that the most attractive people were sometimes very arrogant, boastful, and rude, and yet they were always popular. Well, how does one explain that paradox? Well, I learned about it when I worked in Washington, D.C. As you may know, I was a house intern, very part-time, for one semester. And I would get off on the red line and walk across. You used to be able to walk right in front of the Capitol building in the 90s, go over to the Rayburn, And my rep was on the House Transportation Committee, so often I'd run around and collect signatures, and I would have to physically go from office to office. Could you sign this thing to support this, bridge in Issaquah or something like that? And so I'd go around getting signatures, and I actually ended up meeting a lot of these representatives. And some of them were just the nicest people, salt of the earth. You could totally tell that regardless of their party, they really felt like they were here to serve their country and to make the country a better place. And then there were some other people you would run into who definitely were arrogant, boastful, and rude. Usually one of the indicators to me of which side they would be is if I walked into their office, and what was the first image you would see above the front desk? If it was something about the country or the district they were from, I was like, this will be a nice person. If it was a gigantic portrait of the representative, then I knew I'm dealing with an ego like this. I think I've told this story, but the guy I worked for, they wanted me working the phones, so I had to sit at home with a tape recorder listening to his voice because he didn't feel that he should have to name himself when calling his own office, that the staff should just know when he said hello that it was Representative so-and-so. I found that a little arrogant, and I failed the test. But yes, I used to wonder why, if they were so arrogant, why do they keep getting reelected? And because people are funny. I think we're kind of funny what we're drawn to. Yes, some of them were good at play acting. Some of them would be really arrogant one minute to some lowly staffer, and then, they could be the chummiest, nicest person when they were at the obligatory small-town diner, right? One cannot get elected in America if one is not able to sit down at a small-town diner. Funny, nobody ever goes, I don't think he's a real American. I didn't see him hanging out at the faculty lounge. It was always like, it's always that diner, right? And they could be all, shucksy country bumpkin. And then when I'd meet them, suddenly all the shucksy disappeared. And it's taken me a long time in life to realize that as people, we are so drawn to the appearance of confidence and strength, and to things that give us the impression of confidence and strength. So people who brag all the time and never apologize and stand tall and give a firm handshake, we're kind of drawn to them. They're attractive. And we find that sort of confidence, even if it veers into arrogance, as kind of comforting. I want to be in the presence of some. They make me feel secure because they're strong and they're tough. And, and you'd always go like, and again, you're growing up, you don't understand this. Except you'd sit there, you sit there on the bus and the girls are talking, they're like, oh my God, he is such a jerk. I just got his number. Like, wait, I thought he was such a jerk. And then they'll tell you how much of a jerk he was and all the jerky things he did and why they can't wait to get back together with him. And you're sitting there going, what in the world am I missing? He's strong. He's confident. He radiates security, popularity. It isn't about niceness. And so we also find that I think people like that, we remember their names and their presence, and they have an impact on us. You learn this when you interview for jobs. You have to be kind of a bragger, right? You can imagine a law firm, for example, is looking to hire. And so they hire one person, comes in and says, where have you been? Well, I was at, such and such firm over there. And, I win some and I lose some. And, I try to do my best. I try to listen to people and sort of feel what they're going through. And, okay. Then the next one comes in. So tell us what you can offer for, Larson, Johnson, Rothstein, LLP. And then he's like, I know. Listen, I know I was over at Legal Aid for 5 years, but I can tell you, I won more cases for my clients than anyone in that office. I had the highest win ratio, and I could take the most guilty person in the world, and I could set him free. I won more. I'm the best fighter there ever was, and I can assure you, if you pick me for Rothstein Larson LLP, I will be a whole, soulless, heartless monster that will rip their hearts out and thrash them and dance on their grave, and that's why I will one day be fitting to get my picture on a movable electric billboard in Phoenix. Ooh, I like this guy. He's a fighter. Right? We're drawn to that. Bragging works. He may be cocky, but it works. What's your weakness, applicant? Well, sometimes I don't win cases, but I really do my best. Sometimes it's hard to balance family and work. What's your greatest weakness? Win too much and work too hard. Ooh, I like that guy, right? Sounds like a fighter. He could be lying through his teeth, but we're drawn to the confidence. We talk about how much we hate braggers, but we can't get enough of them. Being arrogant and boastful and rude sometimes works in our world. It gets you promotions, which is also why it's hard to quit when we get into community. Because in community, Christian community, Paul's got this vision. Jesus has got this vision. I mean, you look at Jesus' disciples, and they had things like that. James and John, their mom is trying to get them. She comes up to Jesus at the Transfiguration. She's like, hey, this is really good. Could you give my one son on the right hand and my other son on the left? And Jesus is like, this isn't how this works. I mean, you would see that in Jesus. He's got a tax collector who's rich. He's got fishermen on the other hand. He's got Mary Magdalene along with him. She used to live in the cemetery and be possessed by demons. He's got all of them. His vision of community is not one where there are ladders and hierarchies and jockeying. It just doesn't work. Yes, we have our processes for how we vote and stuff like that. But it's not supposed to be one where we use each other as tools or stepping stones. And I think that's so important for Paul to have to say, is that often the being drawn to this kind of a system isn't something that we consciously do or that we even realize we're doing it. Because it's one of those habits we pick up in the world, and we bring it with us when we come through the big wooden doors. But it's not what Christian community is about. It's not what love is about. What is that love called? That's agape. The community where everyone is trying to build each other up, and no one is trying to get on top of someone else. That's agape. That is what Christian love is. Amen.